the pros do things a little bit offbeat, a little bit off the wall, a little bit funny type of moves they do sometimes. And then, of course, Thursday, community critique. So if you guys want your replays, your games to be analyzed on air by me, Axelav, go to MajorLeagueGaming.com/replays. We'll take a look at some of those on Thursday. And of course, at the end of every episode, I do a question and answer period, so please tweet me all your questions at ISAxelav. Without further ado, let's get into mechanics of the Bazaar. We're going to start off with how to play a turtle mech against Protoss. And this one, and then we're going to go on to, Spinecrawler Rush against Protoss, and then we're going to do Phoenix Colossi versus Terran. So one from each race. A bunch of cool games. Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to start out with Turtle Mech against Protoss. There's 3 main things that are important when you're going Turtle Mech. 1, make sure you are defended from frontal assaults. 2, make sure you can prevent any harass that they throw at you or any type of side assaults, I guess you could say. And of course, the last one is going to be to ensure that you have a strong late game. So let's jump into this game here. It's I think this is a High Masters player. So not quite the pro gamer. Didn't quite have time to grab a whole bunch of replays, but it's still a great game, and it's got a lot of good utilities. Very, very, very top Masters players are playing in this match, and it's going to be, we're going to take a look at the setup he has, right? So from a Terran perspective, right, his opponent right now is, by the way, it's fairly standard opening, like 1-gate expansion, getting a crew of Blink Stalkers to kind of contain and harass them a bit while they're both teching up. But the Terran player, he opened with some nice Banshee harass, and then, some Hellion run-bys and stuff, and he didn't really get a ton of damage done, which is why you see he's a little bit behind in supply, but, I mean, it still kind of kept his opponent off balance. It was the most important thing is allowed him to scout his opponent. So if you want to incorporate some early-game harass and then go into your Turtle Mech, feel free, but you can also just probably get faster command centers and get more of them, and that'll kind of counterbalance the fact you're not harassing your opponent. So he's got a few Banshees from early game. He's not really going to get too many more of those. Siege tanks, we can look at the base infrastructure. It's going to be a bunch of factories getting even more command centers. He's building tons of command centers. You've got a lot of extra minerals. You want to make plenty of command centers. So let's actually just get into this game. Protoss tries to harass him a bit, but he defends it just fine. Even more command centers being built here. So now this is the point where he's going to start going into turtle mode. You can see the setup here. It looks pretty decent versus the frontal assault. Even going to try to throw in a Hellion drop into action there. But as the game goes on, he's going to try to get himself more and more and more turtled up and defend. We can see adding missile turrets to supplement against air or of course, drop play. One of the main counters to mech is if they can drop units on top of your tanks, you want those missile turrets right by those tanks to do so. Also, hopefully we'll see some missile turrets coming up on the right side. There's one. I need a few more here. In fact, let's jump into Daybreak. Oops, sorry. Let's jump into Daybreak, and let's take a look at basically the important parts to defend from the frontal assault on Daybreak. So, if you're a Terran player, you're at the bottom left-hand corner, right? This is your main base. Of course, you got to watch this front area right here. So, you need to watch this area, and then you need to watch this area right here, around here, kind of early. So, where you should position your units, right? If you're really worried to defend that. Your main defending units are going to be planetary fortresses, siege tanks, and then missile turrets to defend basically any type of front harass, or any type of frontal assault, or any type of side harass. So you need to think about where you're going to place your buildings to defend against this. So one thing is you're going to want that planetary fortress right here. So we're going to put a big giant square for your planetary fortress with a big X through it. And then, of course, once you do take that third base, you're going to put another planetary fortress right here. And then the other thing is that if your opponent's going Blink Stalkers, they can kind of blink around and attack you through this path. So what you want to do here is you want to put another planetary fortress maybe somewhere to distract that. This one's not so necessary, but maybe you could put one kind of in this area just to make sure they can't kind of run around your army. You're not worried. Planetary fortresses are not super expensive, so feel free to make a couple extras, and why not? You're playing a turrety style anyway. And then, of course, you're going to want to put some missile turrets all around here. Missile turrets are going to be green, I guess. And there they go. And then now the next step is how do you expand and take more bases, right? Because you need to get some more bases to really work with. So let's say you want to move out to take more territory, right? You're going to need to build more missile turrets and more planetary fortresses. You're of course going to put a planetary fortress here. And then you're going to want to eventually get some up here. This is kind of like your natural progression as time goes on. Put a big one here. And so you can kind of see the way you evolve. So you're going to start here. You're going to work your way actually first up this way. Right. This is step 1. Then you're going to head up this way. This is going to be step 2. And then these right here are going to be 3. And then, of course, 4. So this is kind of how your plan is to crawl across the map. And you have to do it very methodically, very safely. And the important thing to do if you want to be methodically and safe, don't forget to build missile turrets on the way. Every tank you build, add in a missile turret, right? Just keep throwing these guys. Make a big martial line of missile turrets across the map. Those will keep your tanks safe from air threats, and of course they'll keep you safe from warp prisms or any type of drops landing on top of your tank and negating that huge key range advantage. So you kind of want to just crawl over the map with the setup. Let's take a look back in the replay and see what the player did in this case, actually. So if we fast forward here, we can see he's going to slowly set up his own base. One thing he's worried about, there's a little bit of a drop harass here. This is pretty annoying. This is why he should have been a little bit faster when sending missile turrets here. This command center probably hit out a little bit too early. He didn't really quite defend his territory before he moved that out. So a couple little mistakes there. But the most important thing is, of course, that he's able to eventually defend this, which he should have no problem with some Hellions there, or even the Banshees can go and defend that. Then, of course, he has plenty of command centers, so we can just retake that third. As we fast forward here, once he does get his nice setup, maybe, you know, if you're, as you practice this, you'll be able to get it faster and faster and faster and faster. But once he does get the ideal setup, you can take a look at what it's going to look like. So right around here, we can see kind of the goal of this setup. So he's got a lot of missile turrets here protecting this whole area, right? So he can't get dropped. He's got a planetary defending against a blink attack. A planetary defending the front. This is going to be an orbital that'll help him get more economy. His tanks are all positioned kind of behind planetaries and are nicely spread out. And then, of course, you can have this will be another planetary that'll be turned in to defend his third base. So he's got a really, really good defensive setup. You see missile turrets everywhere. There should be probably 2 here as well. And maybe a couple missile turrets, like 1 here and 1 here. And these 2 squares, just so as he moves out, his tanks are a little bit more protected. But that's kind of the idea. So this is how you kind of turtle and kind of just protect yourself. But now you need to think, how can I ensure a strong late game? The most important thing is just constantly build a ton of command centers. You got to build a ton of command centers, because that's what's going to allow you to basically have a really strong late game as Terran. Because as you get more and more of these orbitals, right, you can stay on a pretty small SCV count. He's only 45. And he could actually probably, I would have liked to see him go up to maybe 60 or 70 early. And then as he gets more and more command centers, he could just kill those SCVs off. And then he could have about 20 to 30 food advantage over his opponent in the late game from having basically an equal economy from mules, but a lesser amount of food invested into those harvesters. So you want to build a ton of orbitals. And then, of course, the other thing that you need to do when you to ensure your late game is you have to be very on top of scouting, because you don't want to be massing tanks if you're doing an air transition, and also you want to make sure that you can balance your tank versus missile turret production, basically, depending how many war prisms they get or the angles they come in at. So those are the 2 things. And then the last thing we want to talk about to ensure a late game is that you have to preserve your army. So when you do move out to take a 4th base, it's just fast forward a little bit to see what happens here. When you do finally move out to take your 4th base, well, so here's one of the problems. The whole idea is we just talked about ensuring the late game you methodically move across the map, take more and more bases. And right here he's moving out, but he hasn't even taken his 4th base yet, right? So he's kind of going for like a 160 food mech timing attack, but the timing attack is super late because he's spent so much money on, you know, a whole bunch of missile turrets, planetaries, etc. So this is one of the things you don't want to do when you're playing a turtle mech style. You want to try to ensure a strong late game, which means preserve your army. If you're turtling, you can't really ever move out early, just because your opponent's going to have more units than you because they haven't invested in all those planetary fortresses and all those missile turrets, etc. Or most likely they haven't. If they have, in general, you want to pretty much stay turtled up. So this is what you want to avoid. Eventually, when you do take your 4th base, you want to kind of leapfrog it and take it methodically and carefully with the missile turrets, the planetary fortresses, to make sure it's safe. And then to ensure the late game, you scout. And if they go air, of course, you're going to switch to air yourself. Vikings, a couple Thors, maybe even some battle cruisers later in the game. They stay ground. You stay with siege tanks and later add in battle cruisers again. Those are going to be your key late game units playing a turtleneck style. Or maybe Ravens, but most likely battle cruisers versus Protoss. So that's kind of the idea of playing turtleneck. Let's jump over and talk about the three key concepts of playing this turtleneck style again. You have to make sure you're defending from front attacks, right? So make sure you got plenty of planetaries, plenty of siege tanks. And then also you have to make sure that you can prevent harass. So make sure you have plenty of missile turrets, maybe a little mobile anti-harass force, a Banshees, a Raven, and a couple of Vikings would be great. And then you have to ensure you have a strong late game by constantly building command centers and expanding, then also preserving your army and scouting to make sure that they're not doing some mass air switch that'll catch you unawares. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little demonstration about how to play Turtlemech. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to get on to a Spine Crawler Rush. We're going to watch Hawk take on SKT1's Rain.